Hi, I'm Sandy. Welcome to Ancestry Roads. And today we're going to talk about hidden family cemeteries. And if you have any family buried in Appalachia, you are going to have some hidden family cemeteries out there, ones that are not documented, or even if they are documented, they're not documented on how to find them. And I have a special guest with me today, and this is usually my partner in crime because whenever I need to find those hidden family cemeteries, I'm usually in the mud. And so today's guest with me is going to be Mike. Mike's my husband, and he has joined me on several different excursions to try and find some family cemeteries. And I could tell you that there are two that we're going to talk about specifically today that are in West Virginia. The first one is the Hamrick Family Cemetery. And I will tell you right now, there are about 500 of them that are named exactly the same. And then my beloved Bonner clan, the Bonner Family Cemetery. The Bonner, in particular, we've been given an idea of where it was, a really good idea where it was, and I actually went fly fishing with my son while Mike went searching for the cemetery. So I'll let you explain how you searched but did not find the cemetery for the first couple of tries.
Well, we knew in general where it was, and there was an address, but the address didn't align with any address numbers that were on the mailboxes. I was like, okay, it's between these two. It should be here. And I went back and forth a couple times, and finally I just said, let me just get out, park my truck, walk up. It wasn't a driveway per se. It's kind of like a road that went.
Well, yeah, but we actually, if you remember correctly, we did not really know. We knew about the general area, and it's in Randolph County, West Virginia. And we knew that this was my ancestors' property right on the mighty Elk River. And if you remember, though, when you drop, me and our son off to the fly fishing excursion, you were warned, do not be going looking at people's property and going around and stopping at their property, because this is not the place or the county to be doing that.
Well, there wasn't any no trespassing. There wasn't any no trespassing sign, so I was okay there. And I figured if someone stopped, I would just say, I think the cemetery back there has got my wife's kin, and I'm just looking for it.
But that's the thing. It was back roads. It was not a well-traveled road. It's a road that, unless you really live there, and there weren't a lot of houses, but unless you really lived there, you had no reason to be there.
That's
and
true.
Keep in mind, back in certain pockets of Appalachia, they know everybody. So here we are, a couple coming in with a big red truck with Georgia license plates. So clearly we were not locals, and they were probably confused why somebody would want to find a graveyard. And I'll tell you in just a bit why this Bonner one is so important to me. I've had aunts and uncles that have been there, and they knew where it was, but their description of how to get there was tricky. And they kept, as you mentioned, they kept saying there's a driveway. There's a driveway. But the problem with that driveway is that driveway looked like a driveway to a home, to a house.
Yes, because there was actually two houses you went between, and there was a shed or barn to the right-hand side, which is where this gravel road actually went to. And once you got behind the houses, the house on the left, there was a cemetery.
And I should mention, too, that a lot of our visits back home to West Virginia, and specifically to look for this particular cemetery, this was years. This was not just a month or two or a year. I think we had been searching for about 3, maybe 4 years for a cemetery. We always went searching for this particular cemetery during the spring or summer. That was it. One year we decided, because West Virginia was going to get a quite large snowstorm, and down in Georgia we don't get a lot of snow, so we decided to take a trip in February one year to allow our son to see snow, and a lot of snow, I might add. And because there were no leaves on the trees, when you drove down the road, that's how you were able to spot there was even a graveyard behind some of these houses. So let me show you some of the pictures while we discuss what's going on. So you can see that this is a house and a driveway, and that's the shed he's talking about. This is clearly someone's driveway. It could be to the house, the log cabin that was here on the left, or there's a house here on the right and a couple sheds. No leaves on the tree. And right across the street from this is the large Elk River where we were fly fishing. So we still didn't see it from fly fishing. Mike only saw it from driving back up and down and around these roads that are very hidden roads. And as we got to, I guess, closer to the log cabin that happens to sit in front of the cemetery, you notice some tombstones out of the corner of your eye.
Yep.
And I guess you came back, and that's when you came back and said, I know where it is. And we said, well, it's either now or never. We've been searching for this for way too long. So let's go ahead and take a chance that we'll be allowed on the property. And as you said, there was no trespassing sign.
Yeah.
But this is the Bonner Cemetery that I'd been searching for a very, very long time. My third great grandparents are buried here, as well as my second great grandparents are buried here. And if you notice, it's just a very simple cemetery. There's no signage. There's not a lot of information. If you didn't see the tombstones, I'm not positive that you would even know that it's a cemetery. And you can see that log cabin that I was mentioning is right here in front of it. The road that Mike traveled up and down is in front of it. And on the other side of that road is the Elk River where we fly fishing. And it's well capped. It's mostly moss, not grass. And if it did not sit a little high up on a small mound, a small ridge, I still don't think we would have found it. What do you think?
Not from the road. The only thing you could have done is knocked on somebody's door.
And keep in mind, this property is not owned by the person in the log cabin. And I will mention, since then, since we found that, and today that log cabin did come up for sale, and we were really, really, really tempted to buy it because then we could also maintain our ancestral graveyard and fly fish right across the street. But we, I guess, sat on that decision just a little too long, and somebody else snapped it up. Okay, and then a couple more pictures. So this will show you, this is my second great grandfather's tombstone. And when we go to cemeteries, we try to clean up the stones as best we can. We lightly brush them with soft toothbrushes. We do not use chemicals. We do not use flour. We don't use any type of anything really on them. We just try and gently clean them up a little bit so they can be seen. We barely touch them because that's the way that it should be. Some of these tombstones are of a material that even a soft toothbrush will have them disintegrate. So that's not something we want on our watch for that. And then that happens to be one of my third great grandparents as well. As you can see, a very, very old tombstone, 1855. We're going to show you later on an even older one, but this is just a peaceful location to be buried. And the reason why this was important to me is not only because I do a tremendous amount of research on my Bonner family, but specifically because of this man. So let me bring up another screen here. I'll move this one real quick, and I will bring up another screen to show you. There we go. And this is my third great grandfather. And just so you guys know, I am using a free online program called WikiTree. It's absolutely free. It does require you to do the work of putting in your ancestors' information and sources and things like that, but it's free, I might add. And it's a great collaborative website where there's only one family tree and you connect everybody to it. So it's pretty cool. But Samuel Bonner is, like I said, my third great grandfather, fought in the War of 1812. He's the one who actually settled in Randolph County, West Virginia, at the time Virginia, then West Virginia, and brought our family line to this general area of Randolph County and Webster County, West Virginia, which are borderline right there, along with the Elk. Now, the reason why he was also important, not only because he brought my family line here to a place that Mike and I visit constantly, almost all my relatives are still living there as well, is because he fought in the War of 1812, he was granted this land from the federal government. How cool is that? So this is why my family are from West Virginia, because he fought in War of 1812. He is actually substitute for somebody who chose not to fight. The problem is with the land, they couldn't find record that he was a substitute. So what happened was he, excuse me, a little bit of cough. So what happened? They needed to find source documentation for him. And here's some source documentation that they found. His wife, Sarah, so Samuel died. So his wife, Sarah, fought for over 40 years after they got this land to have an official claim. And this is what she used. She used that he was actually a pension from the War of 1812 to get this land. She was denied over and over and over again the claim of the land. Her son, John, my second great-grandfather, had to come in and help her because she did not read and she did not write. So when she filled out any form, she used the X as her signature. And her son came in to help her so they could claim this land, which was important to me because that's how, again, our family became part of the Randolph and Webster County, West Virginia Bonners. And there's Sarah, where she's buried there. Originally, they just had two rocks, and a gentleman that's well known in Webster County, he's passed now. He's a distant ancestor named Parker Bonner. He actually petitioned to get the tombstones for both of them from the federal government. So this was a big get for me. I think you knew it was a big get for me as well. And I think that's why you kept trying so hard to find this particular cemetery.
Yeah, this one meant a lot.
And I will say there were a couple tricks, and that's kind of why we're talking about this, not only to share ancestry and history, and we do go to a lot of cemeteries as well, but also to understand that certain places you approach it differently. So for this was a very hidden road. This is nowhere near a major road. You had to travel pretty far. I think the nearest town, larger town that had a hospital is Elkins. And what would you say? That was about 45 minutes away?
Yeah.
And that was, your fairly large town. We had to go off what they would consider some major highways, Highway 15 that goes through Randolph and Webster County. But we had to go off several of those to get to this location. So when you're doing something like that and you're digging around on some of these back roads of Appalachia, be considerate. You are the outsider here. You're not a part of the clan, even though this was my grandfather's property and land, and they lived there until not too long ago. I'm still the outsider. So keep that in mind. I think going and knocking on a lot of doors and saying, hey, do you know where the cemetery is not the way to go for this type of location. And what we did is we asked tons of relatives. they gave us an area this big, and then we started to shrink it down little by little by you basically taking your truck and traveling all around these roads and just being a nice guy as well.
Yeah, because this was on a side road, off of a side road that was not off a major road.
And it, like I said, if we had gone back there again during when we normally go, spring or summer, I don't think we would have saw it. It was because
No.
the leaves were not on the tree. So if there's a bigger tip that I could give you, it would probably be that, to try different seasons. Try to asking different people, different locations. There is a resort, the Elk Spring Resort, that's very close to this, and that's where we are fly fishing as well. And they have a restaurant, and we did get some advice from some of the guys there, but most of it was, remember, you're the outsider here, so keep that in mind. When you go in with that attitude, I think it's the best and the safest and the way to find what you want to find. Now we have another cemetery that we went searching for. And I will start by saying that the Hamricks of West Virginia are tremendous amount, just such a tremendous amount. So just in the town of Webster Springs, West Virginia, and around the town of Webster Springs, West Virginia, I want to say there are probably at least 8 known Hamrick family cemeteries. And constantly on Find a Grave and on WikiTree, I find people just dumping people that were buried supposedly in a Hamrick family cemetery in a category. The one that we documented, and that's a future trip for us to try and document all of them, so we have a good handle on where our ancestors are buried with the Hamrick name. But the one that we wanted to find was also another unicorn, because we were told that it had a beautiful tombstone of a military ancestor. And if we found it, this would have been the oldest ancestor we have, their tombstone. The tombstone was fairly new, but the ancestor was not. The ancestor was born in mid 1700s. So that was a unicorn for us. And I think we drove around a couple Hamrick family cemeteries.
Well, there was one coming out of Webster Springs. You're going up the mountain, you start to go around to Bend, and there's a little flat area in a turn, maybe 15 feet by 20 feet.
That
and
one,
put a cemetery there.
yeah, that one is different. That one is an Isaac Gregory, and everybody in their brother and sister stopped there. Mostly because if you're from Webster Springs, West Virginia, you have Hamrick in your family line, guaranteed. So everybody stops because it feels like one of those rest areas. You know, when you're traveling the mountains and they have the scenic overlook and they have this little spot. Didn't it feel like that to you?
It felt like that, yeah. Or like it was like a pull off for someone when they had their horse and wagon a long time ago.
And of course we pulled off there too. That one thankfully does have a first name, but there are about 8 of them that do say Hamrick family cemeteries. There, as you mentioned, before you get to the one you mentioned, actually coming out of Webster Springs, going towards Randolph County, which I guess that would be east. If you knew the last street on the left coming out of town, if you took that left and went to a dead end and took a right into somebody's driveway, behind that house is another Hamrick family cemetery. And I mentioned that because that one, even though it's called Hamrick Family Cemetery, is known as the Kelly Ben Hamrick Cemetery because Kelly Ben Hamrick is buried there. This is how we have to realize who's buried where, is what's the most prominent person in the cemetery. And that's what we're going to start to name it. And again, the reason why there's so many Hamrick family cemeteries and they're all named the same is because if you're from this area, there are a lot of Hamricks. and they buried their people on their farms. So let me show you, let me bring up this one. This one, I would say is completely different than the Bonner one. And before I show you some pictures, the reason why I say that is it's closer to town. It's not too far off the main road. And also, as we're driving around for a different cemetery, a completely different cemetery that we knew where it was. So we're driving around. A gentleman stopped us. So it's like, the two police cars. We're going this way. He's coming this way. A gentleman stopped in his truck, and we naturally slowed down. He goes, "Hey, who are you? What are you doing? What are you looking for?" And I remember we were going to a cemetery called Meadowlands Cemetery. Very easy to get to, and well documented too, by the way. And I was like, "Well, we're headed to the cemetery because I'm trying to find some of my people." And come to find out, this gentleman, Bill Trippett, he's no longer living, sadly, but he is an awesome man from that area. Bill was like, "What name are you looking for?" And I think both of us were kind of like, blah, 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 blah. We were just shocked. Somebody stopped us and asked what name.
And the key thing is just be nice, be friendly, and it sets people at ease.
Yeah, it really does. And keep in mind, while we're doing this, we have our kid who's probably preteen at this point in the back seat with his phone playing games, thinking we're totally strange and weird. But hey, I'm here because I can see snow. So he's like playing the game. So with Bill, I was kind of flubbing a bit, and I was like, "Well, Bonners," because I'm always looking for Bonners. And he goes, "Nope, not going to find any Bonners up there." And I go, "What? How do you know?" Because I take care of the cemetery. I know all the cemeteries around here. I take care of a lot of cemeteries around here. So we started giving him some names, and he goes, "Yep, you'll find them." "Nope, you won't find them." So out of the blue, I guess because we had mentioned a certain hammer that we were looking for, this particular unicorn of the oldest ancestor that might have a tombstone, he said, "I know exactly where you can find that particular tombstone. And let me tell you how to get there." He goes, "It's on my property." He goes, "My kids live there now, but it's my farm." And we were like, this is like divine intervention here. So let me pull up. This is off the main road. And again, one of the Hamrick family cemeteries. And you can kind of see in the background here, the mountain in a valley. That was his farm. And it's a very large farm. He had cattle,
Yes,
right?
Yes, it is.
And then that was half of it with a nice farmhouse. And then the other half was all woods. And so we saw the sign off the road and we stopped. There's no cemetery near the sign.
No, it was just a big open field with some cows.
It was just, and of course, I'm like, I'm not going in somebody's property. This is the side that was for the cows and for whatever livestock they also had. You can kind of see way back in the background too, the Elk River. This is a beautiful piece of property right on the Elk River. And I'm like, I'm not going to a field of cows. I'm not going to go into a field of, into somebody's yard, basically what this is, even though Bill had said, "Go ahead, go. Everybody does it. Just make sure you
keep going." Because
right when
you think you've gone too far, gone so far, you need to go farther.
And that's true, because you kind of took a peek around. So this is his property, and you'll see this gate. So here's the sign. Here's the road. It's not the main road into Webster Springs. It's a main road in Burgo, West Virginia, right outside of Webster Springs. So here's the sign, and we had pulled over to the side here. And of course, my kid's still in the background, like, "What are y'all doing? Do I have to get out? Can I play?" So, Mike, you came down. You parked the car. We sat or the truck. We sat in the truck, and you came through the gates.
Well, we knew it was somebody's property, so
yeah,
I went down there first on my own just to look around, and said, "Okay, I think it's through a gate that's down across the field." And thankfully we both had our mud boots on.
I know. That is probably another huge tip we can give you. Wear them or have them because you're going to need them if you're trying to find hidden family cemetery, even in good weather. You're going to want them. You're not going to want the vines and everything. But this picture kind of shows, like we were sitting here on the road, still kind of half on the road, half not. You're coming down through this gate, and he could either go straight align with the road or come down to the left here of this picture and go down looking towards the river for the cemetery. We had no clue. The only clue that we were told from Bill was close the gate so the cattle don't get out and keep going, as you said. So you kept going for quite a bit. And then I'm freaking out because I'm like, where is he? I don't have a clue where this guy went. You know, you're gone for quite a while and you come back and you're like, it could be down there. I don't know.
There's a gate and the road continues into the woods.
Yeah. And remember it forked too, I think.
Yes.
Didn't you have a fork like right before this picture? You could either go straight or you could go to the left. And you came back and got me. And we followed your steps back. I started going to the left, I think, of the fork, and then I gave that up pretty quick. But look at this. This is pretty much the way to the cemetery. How many miles would you say it was from your truck to the cemetery?
It was probably 1.5 miles. It was a long walk.
It's
hard to tell from that picture, but that is actually. It had just rained, so as soon as you stepped on that ground, you sunk into it.
You really did. And there were little creeks, little waterways. I don't even know if you call them creeks at that point, little branches that went to and from the elk, whichever way it was going. I was freaking out about snakes. I don't know. This was February, a couple years ago. This was February. Again, no leaves on the trees. And I can only imagine during spring and summer with the leaves and some vines and things like that. So again, you still want those mud boots to protect you. But I do know for sure that if you were in spring or summer, you were going to see the snakes a lot more. And this just keeps going. It just keeps going back. And I remember us discussing with each other, we must be fools because we don't know where we're going. We don't know how much further we're going to go. All we knew is close the gate and keep going. Our preteen kid is back in the truck and he's on a tablet or a cell phone playing a game. Who knows, if he'd even know if somebody jumped in the truck to take it. Because I think you left it on because it was cold.
Doors were locked.
Yeah, doors were locked.
The thing with this, though, is you're going down this road and you're like, okay, this road doesn't appear to go anywhere in particular, but there is a road here. So that's what kept us going.
I think you're right, because there were tracks. We did see in the previous picture, there were tracks where they had some type of four-wheeler maybe or equipment. But there's no cattle here. There's no reason to be in these woods as far as livestock or farming. So they own this half of it, and it's all woods. And then we literally came on clearing. It's hard to see in this picture, but we came into a little clearing. And over to our kind of left-hand side was some fencing and tiny cemetery. So we're like, this has to be it. And it is one of the most beautiful places I think you could land when you die. You can sort of see through the trees past the green. The Elk River is quite wide there. It flows there. As you're there at the cemetery, you can hear it. The water's rushing by. You've got the seclusion of this ring of trees around. And it just was peaceful. It was definitely peaceful. And I don't know. I mean, what was your impression when you first saw it?
Well, one, I was happy we found it, but I was actually surprised how many tombstones were there.
Yeah, I think I was too, because a lot of times you just see rocks.
Yeah.
So that's a really good point. Again, the reason why this particular one in this particular Hamrick family cemetery was important is because my fifth great grandfather, Benjamin Hamrick, is buried here. And if the stories were true, that he did actually have a tombstone that was still standing, then this would be not the oldest tombstone. I'm trying to say how to phrase this right, because the tombstone was clearly put up in the last, I would say, 15 years, maybe. So, but this would be the oldest ancestor that still has a very clear, readable tombstone, and that would have been Benjamin Hamrick and his family. Now, I'm positive amongst these pictures. Let me go back. I'm positive in these pictures there are probably more buried here than what the rocks or the tombstone show. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, absolutely.
And then there's Benjamin Hamrick, who fought in the Revolutionary War. And 1755 is when he was born. And today, this is the oldest tombstone of an ancestor that we have found. So this was a pretty big unicorn for us as well. I had the Bonners that we knew were out there. We knew that cemetery was out there, and we were on a quest to find it. For this particular one, everybody always talked about the Hamrick family cemetery and which one are you going to find your people in. And I can tell you from the ones that I do know about around the Webster Springs area, the Webster County, Randolph County area, I do have ancestors in every Hamrick family cemetery, but this one is my fifth great grandfather. And why was this one important besides the tombstone? Again, you're going to go back to WikiTree where we have the profile pretty much all decked out. He's actually listed as a patriot. So he was in the Revolutionary War. And a couple things just to mention real quick about WikiTree too is that it can also show you some DNA relatives that are members of WikiTree, which is kind of cool because it helps for collaboration of your family tree and working things out. But this was pretty cool. So the family really came from Fauquier County, Virginia. A lot of you that research the Hamricks will probably know Peter Hamrick, and he's kind of was the one that stepped foot into what is now the United States. And Benjamin was there, and he came over and made his way over to Greenbrier and then made his way over to Webster County, West Virginia. And that was pretty much our really big get. And I'm just going to show you how we've documented and sourced out some of the people. But he was a pretty big get for us. And one day, we talked about this year being that year, we'll go back and document the other Hamrick family cemeteries in and around Webster County, West Virginia. It's not an easy job. Everybody thinks that you could just go with your cell phone or your camera and document, but it's not. You got to go during really a certain time of day. I prefer dusk to get the best picture so you don't have the shadows. You're taking a picture of a tombstone and you have a shadow of you taking a picture of a tombstone doesn't really help anything. So, and if you have a large cemetery, it's a lot of work. That's why I usually bring, my partner in crime here, not only for his truck, but also he helps take the photos, and he knows what our son used to. And our son used to really like to clean up the military tombstones, and he would leave change. If you look it up, if you leave change, I believe he would leave a penny, and that was said that he visited. And I think if you leave a quarter, I might have that reversed, but if you leave a quarter, then you actually served with the person. But he used to come with us and photograph and take and clean up and take photographs, but not so much anymore. Now it's just the two of us. So I guess a couple tips that we should mention about our trips looking for hidden family cemeteries. And I'll bring up one of your favorite photos, one of your favorite trips. This is from another trip in Webster County, West Virginia. And this is in particularly the B.F. Gregory Cemetery. And let me bring that up.
Yeah. So if you're going to bring a truck, make sure it's 4-wheel drive and you got tires that got some tread. Because if it's rained like it had there, it will get muddy and you can get stuck really easily.
And if you're one of those type of people who like your truck nice and clean and pristine and shiny on the outside, keep in mind you're going to use a lot of water and soap.
Or park on the road and walk it in.
That's true. This one is a really good example. I'm not going to show you the cemetery. I'm just going to show you these pictures. But this is another excellent case of where it shows the tips from the Bonner Cemetery went to and where it shows the tips of the Hamrick Family Cemetery went to. Again, this cemetery, the B.F. Gregory Cemetery in Webster Springs, Webster County, West Virginia, very well documented, very well. And if any of you have a Hamrick in your family, almost all of you will know Colonel Isaac Gregory, and he's buried there, and he has a tombstone very similar to Benjamin's. So this was an easy cemetery for us to photograph. It wasn't bad, but trying to find it was a little tricky. And you had to actually come out of Webster Springs, West Virginia, go down a very slanted downward road towards the lumber mill and drive to the lumber mill, which looked like we were trespassing, by the way.
Yeah.
And go down and all the way around to the back of like a horseshoe, I guess, of this lumber mill. And when we did that, there's a whole community. There are tons of houses back there, that were built way back in the day. People still living there. I think we were shocked. We thought that it would be just woods. And again, the road looks pretty much like this. It's not a road. It's muddy. It was a dirt road. No leaves again, I think, on that trip on the trees. And we were clearly strangers, big red truck, Georgia tags in West Virginia. So we're clearly strangers. And I remember you stopped and just, rolled down the window and started asking locals where the cemetery is.
I'll talk to anybody.
You will, especially when we're on a mission, because when you come from Georgia here, and this is one of your missions is to document your ancestors, but also keep in mind, this isn't really near where we were staying as well. It took us about an hour to get here, but this was fascinating because Mike actually, rolled down the window and started talking to these people. They were like, oh yeah. You just passed the cemetery. It's back there. And they go, we'll show you where it is. Follow us. And that guy got in his truck and showed us, which was great, which was awesome. And he wanted to know a little bit, why the heck are you here? I don't think there's any services going on because they can't get the hearse up the muddy road and stuff. So we were telling him we were just documenting my ancestors. And in the meantime, his daughter said, well, if you're so interested in hidden family cemeteries, you should keep going, take a left and go all the way up this mountain. There is a tiny family cemetery at the very, very top. And she goes, and it gives me the creeps because there are some people there that died in the war and came back from the war and then died. And I don't think we thought your truck would make it.
Not with the mud. I mean, you can see here with obviously I was slipping and sliding with all 4 wheels there. You made a good point with the hearse, though, because when I said park on the road and walk it in, the reason my truck got so muddy is there was not really any place to turn around. So when you're doing a cemetery like this or the Hamrick run, where we were going down this dirt road. When you got to the end, the cemetery was there, but there was no place to turn around. So don't see a road do you think goes to a cemetery to automatically just drive in, because you could end up having to back out for a mile.
I'm trying to think. Even the cemetery where my grandmother is buried in Webster County, Point Mountain Cemetery, a good sized church is there, a good sized cemetery is there, and it is literally right on the road, the main road going in and out of the counties. There's not really a place to turn around there either.
No.
So I'm thinking, as you go through Appalachia, take Mike's advice and either walk as far as you can instead of bringing the vehicle in. If you know, I guess you could have backed in, but I don't even think that would have been so great, because what this picture doesn't show is the road is literally like this, and then
It's one
you're
vehicle.
going down.
It's one vehicle wide and slopes off on one side down a hill.
It's definitely was tricky, and I know I was holding, as you were turning around, I was holding my breath and biting my tongue, and meanwhile our kid's still back there playing with it.
Oblivious.
Totally oblivious. Now that he could drive, I don't think he would even attempt this, but you were more happy to attempt it. And then going back to the gentleman who drove us and helped us find this cemetery, as we stopped and said thanks and we're telling him goodbye, and he goes, "Oh, and you should come back, because when it's better weather, go down that incline. You'll have to walk down and go through the brush and the mud and the muck and the snakes and everything else. But there, the lumber mill had a cemetery where they would bury people who died in the lumber mill that weren't from that area or were very, very poor and couldn't afford going back or traveling back to their families' farms or anything like that." And I know that is definitely on your bucket list as well to try and find. I don't know if I will. There's snakes involved.
Well, and we don't even know if we get down there if we're going to find any markers.
That's true. I guess that would have been something we should have asked. And that would have been another good tip, is to ask, is it a full cemetery documented with a few tombstones, or are they all just rocks, or what could it be? It's hard to say. I think, though, for the most part, those were the Hamrick and the Bonner were my really true hidden cemeteries. We have one more that we do know where it is. We have somebody that we know that actually their family lives on the land, was a house, and that's one cemetery we're trying to find, because they keep putting that one guy, Charlie Dodrell's tombstone in the Point Mountain Cemetery, and we've surveyed that cemetery about 25 times looking for that tombstone. To come to find out, he's in another family cemetery that's nowhere near the Point Mountain one. So that was a find a grave issue. Somebody had posted it and put it in the Point Mountain Cemetery on Find a Grave. We obviously went there, documented that cemetery to find he's not there. So when we went back, I went back to the lady who manages the memorial and Find a Grave, and she's like, "Nope, until you can prove it, I'm keeping it there." And I'm like, the absence is proof. Because I think you redocumented that cemetery at least 3 times, twice looking for Judge Charlie Dodrell's tombstone. So, but that one we do know where he is, and when we go back, we'll look at that one as well. And I think I have one other third grandparent that has a cemetery behind a house, but we again know where that one is. The Bonner and the Hamrick one that we showed you today, we had no clue. We had no clue where these were.
Yeah, they took persistence, and I think that's the thing. Don't give up. You're probably circling around it and just haven't hit it yet. So don't give up.
And I'm not even sure the people that lived in the log cabin before, right in front of the Bonner one, they obviously they don't take care of it. A family member that doesn't even live nearby takes care of that cemetery. So I'm not even sure if they would know. And if somebody just moved in, you could ask them, hey, are there Bonners living there? And they would probably say, I don't know. Go see. You're allowed to go around the back, and you don't know if these people that are living in a house in front of it, do they own that property? I don't know. Chances are they don't. I'll give you another good example. Mike and I were looking at a house that we were going to buy in Georgia last year, and there was a family cemetery behind that house. I didn't have a problem with it. I don't think you had a problem with it.
It was in the corner of the backyard.
Yeah. And my concern was I don't want the dogs, to go around it and mess with it. But it had a nice fence and everything. And so my first question was, well, my driveway goes straight to the entrance of this. Do I have to give way? And they said, no, there's an entrance from the back that you go to on like a side public street. And then our next question was, do we maintain it? Do we have to keep the grass up and everything? And they said, no, it belongs to the city. And that's what a lot of these hidden family cemeteries back in Appalachia, they belong to the county, the city, but a lot of people who live nearby will take care of them. I've known a lot of people go back for family reunions, bring their weed whackers and take care of them. I know for my own dad's cemetery that happens to be in Weston, West Virginia, there's just not a lot of money to take care of a very large cemetery. It's Masonic cemetery. There's not a lot of money. It takes a lot of care. So I tend to have a little kit, almost like my garden kit, where I have like the little garden scissors and things like that, where I can clean up his tombstone. Because if I did not, the weeds and the grass would grow over it and you'd never know he was there. So that's another tip.
Your little toothbrush and a squirty bottle full of water.
Yeah. And because his tombstone does get muddy too. So I would say if you're going to go look for hidden family cemeteries, definitely make sure that you have your mud boots. We call them mud boots. There are tall rain boots. They're not just the short ankle ones. We wear the tall ones, and have some type of kit, like Mike said, with a water bottle and soft bristle toothbrushes. Don't do a lot of damage. You're really not there to clean the tombstones as much as document them. And it's the thrill of the hunt, I guess, as well. But also make sure if you're going during summer, things like that, you do definitely want to have sunscreen. Lots of insect repellent as well. We've needed that quite often. I don't know if there's snake repellent to buy. I know that they could probably go through my boots, but I try to look down at the ground constantly as I'm going by. But be courteous. Know where you're at. Don't go rushing in and barging into somebody else's property, because chances are these hidden family cemeteries, you have to travel to them via somebody else's property. So know where you're at. Ask questions. Be friendly. Wouldn't you say?
Yep. Have a smile. It puts people at ease. And when you're willing to talk and be friendly with people, people will be friendly back.
And it does help that you are searching for your ancestors, and your ancestors are probably their ancestors too. So exactly. They'll know, or they'll have an idea of where you can find people. I will say that if you're sitting at home and planning a trip and you honestly cannot find somebody that is fairly modern, I would say let's say 1930s to now, fairly modern. One other resource, but remember, don't bug them too much or with a big list, is a local funeral home. A lot of times they'll also be able to tell you where the ancestors buried and the exact location of some of the cemeteries. But these hidden ones, they're probably not going to know.
Yeah, there won't be a plot map for who's buried where in these hidden ones.
There definitely won't be. So that's about a few of our experiences. Have we found hidden family cemeteries. And like I said, this was not an instant gratification thing. It did take us a long time, even with people that live in the area knew where these cemeteries were. It still took us a while. And in a future webcast coming up in February, I have another guest that's going to talk about a pioneer cemetery of her family's from Kentucky and what it takes to actually get a historical certification on a family cemetery in Kentucky, in the steps to take it one step further if there are pioneers that are buried there. So if you're interested in cemeteries or just interested in Appalachia, stay tuned. We're going to have something coming up in about 2 weeks with that. And otherwise, our next webcast will be about Freemason. So if you're ever curious, wanted to know more about who they are they so secretive? And that kind of goes along the lines with cemeteries as well, because as you go through cemeteries, you could have a Masonic cemetery, which my father happens to be buried in, but you'll notice the Freemasonry signs and symbols on tombstones. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in our next webcast happening next week. So until then, Mike, thanks for coming in and talking about our adventures and fun. And I might add, there's always involved for Mike. I always make sure that we find a really good local restaurant. We skip the chains and we try to go to the local restaurants and be part of the local crowd. It's our heritage. It's our ancestors that came from this area. So we try and find out a common thing. A question is, who are your people?
Yes. Because often we are looking for the Hamrick one, probably anybody we talk to, you are distantly related to.
If you're in Randolph or Webster County, and that is funny because you went fly fishing without me, and a guy next to you was fly fishing, and you were talking about how your son wanted a certain type of fish. You want to go fishing for a certain type of fish. I can't remember what it was. Muskie, that's right. And he goes, "Oh, I'm a guide. I can help you out." And you were like, "Okay, what's your name?" And it's like such and such Hamrick. And then he goes, "Well, you're related to my wife." And I think the joke was, we're all related if you're down here. Like I said, if you're from that area, West Virginia, you've got Hamrick. So I hope this presentation was handy for you. Definitely check out the tombstones that we pictured, and you can find them over on WikiTree. So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again next week.